Praised be Jesus Christ. Dear friends, General Michael Flynn asked me to speak with a message for your rally. I gladly accepted his proposal because I wish to greet you and encourage you in this reawakening of consciences. If you are reawakening, it is because until now someone has forced you to sleep, drugged you, and distracted you from what he was plotting in order to continue undisturbed in his criminal action. But the slumber of American and all people has lasted far too long. It is now the moment to open our eyes, to wake up, and to understand what has happened and what is happening. It is the moment to act. The threat of a third world war is weighing on all of us. They have told us that President Putin invaded Ukraine to support his expansionist ambitions. But in reality, the main purpose of Russia's military operation is to prevent the aggression of the deep state and NATO. Putin is fighting against the same globalist elite that hold us all hostage. On March 6, the Russian ambassador to the United Nations denounced what you have been advocating for 2 years. He declared that Donald Trump is the legitimate president of the United States and that the election was falsified with the complicity of the European nations using the Dominion apparatus. And we know that in order to advance the agenda of the Great Reset, it was necessary to get rid of Trump, who would never have allowed either the pandemic farce or the escalation of the Russian-Ukrainian crisis. This is not a war of the Ukrainian people. It is not the Ukrainian people who are persecuting their Russian brothers, but a puppet government supported by neo-Nazi military militias, a corrupt government designed by the globalist cabal, which today finds itself with a cocaine-addicted president, a former actor and dancer who hides billions in tax havens while the Ukrainian people is among the poorest in Europe. It is not a war of the Russian people. For years, the Russian Federation has been demanding respect for the Russian-speaking minority. And the international community has already turned the other way. It is not a war of the European nation. It is the leaders of the European Union who want a conflict in order to justify implementing the Great Reset and imposing a dictatorial regime made up of limitation on freedom, an impoverishment of the population, the elimination of small businesses, the imposition of an inhuman and technocratic model of life, and the cancellation of the identity of nations, their history, and their religion. It is not a war of the United States. The Americans fought anti-Nazism against Nazism, and it is scandalous that today Biden is helping a government that supports and collaborates with the extremist groups that hoist the swastika and propagate Nazi ideas. It is the deep state with its servant now infiltrated into all institutions that wants war in order to extend its dominion over the whole world, under the pretext of exporting democracy. While in reality it is thinking only on selling weapons, enriching itself, and appropriating the resources of the invaded countries, sowing destruction and death. We should not be surprised to learn that on January the 6th, 2021, at the Capitol in Washington, D.C., there were members of the Azov Battalion present. The enemies of the state have no qualms about allying themselves with war criminals so as to blame their political opponents and accuse President Trump of insurrection. This fact alone should be enough to understand their subversive project and their intention to stop at nothing to achieve it. Behind this war, there is the desire to destroy the international balance, to force European nations to impose sanctions on Russia that mainly affect Europe, in perfect harmony with the aims of the Great Reset, the destruction of the economy of the nation that depend on Russian gas and raw materials, intends to force them to supply themselves from USA in quantity much lower than their needs and at a much higher price. But above all, it intends to subject them and enslave them, as the Under-Secretary of State for Political Affairs, Victoria Nuland, admitted some time ago. Let us have no illusions. These servants of the New World Order, who have managed to occupy the highest position of national governments and international organizations, are our enemies. Enemies of the good and enemies of God. They do not care how many of us will have to die from the effect of the vaccine, from hunger or from bombs. They are only interested in power, personal advantage and the advantage of their masters, whom so far no one has dared to incriminate and condemn. This war is being driven by the pressing need of Biden family to cover up the colossal conspiracy and the very serious crimes that Joe and Hunter have stained their hands with, along with their accomplices. The news of their involvement in the presence of American biolaboratories in Ukrainian territory, co-financed by Soros, in the activity of Burisma, in the monitoring of Obama and Clinton's, confirm an enormous, scandalous conflict of interest that in itself ought to make us ask, in whose name does Joe Biden speak? Does he speak for the defense of the interests of the United States, or to hide the crimes he and his son committed? Does he speak as President of the United States, or as a puppet in the hands of the deep state and the globalist cabal? This is a war. Yes, a war that began some time ago, remained underground and became evident with the pandemic. It is a war of the elite against the whole of humanity. It's an undeclared war, but one that has already claimed millions of victims as a result of denied treatments and forced vaccines more than by weapons. It is a war of the New World Order against you, against us, against our children, our values, and our future. It is a war of darkness against light. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not comprehend it, as St. John tells us in the Gospel. Because darkness hates light. The light is truth, it is clarity, it is honesty. The light is Christ. The darkness is lies. It is deception. It is conspiracy. The darkness is Satan's kingdom. What is Russia asking of Ukraine? To recognize the independence of Crimea, to guarantee the rights of Donetsk and Lugansk, to repress neo-Nazi movement, and to remain neutral. These are things that United Nations should demand first. And Zelensky himself, under pressure from Putin's military forces, has said that he is willing to negotiate peace conditions, perhaps with the intention of obtaining a ceasefire in order to reposition his forces. But Biden does not want this, and is forcing Zelensky to resist, pushing the nation of Europe forward in sending weapons and troops, and threatening, in a mad delirium, preventive intervention with nuclear weapons. This conflict should never have begun if peace had really been desired. But as Joe Biden admitted a few days ago, war is an opportunity, as was the pandemic. And while they calmly tell us that we will soon have to face a food emergency, their accomplices are preparing to profit from the sale of wheat and agricultural products, after having spent the last few years taking possession of millions of acres of cultivable land. What are the magistrates waiting for in order to recognize a coup d'etat in these criminal speculations? How much longer will they leave those who should be defending national interests and promoting good for their citizens free to serve their own interests? You may be wondering why a bishop is speaking with words you would expect to hear from a politician. Perhaps it is because the politicians are almost all servants of the system, sold out to the globalist cabal, paid by the big pharma, Soros, or deep state. Only a few, and you all know who those few are, and some are here today, have had the courage to denounce this worldwide coup, oppose the mainstream narrative, and raise their voices against the violation of the fundamental rights and the constitutional freedoms of citizens. Allow me to speak to you as a bishop. I first denounced it 2 years ago, but now the ferocious and violent assaults of these conspirators is so obvious that they are no longer even hiding. It is an attack by the elite that has as its purpose the destruction of everything that is part of our identity, of our culture, and of our faith. It is an infernal elite, who desire death and hate life, who desire disease and hate health, who hate peace and desire war. An elite that it is based on lies and detests truth. An elite who wants slavery and tyranny and hate the freedom of God's children. It is an elite that hates God, hates our Lord Jesus Christ, and has devoted itself to the service of Satan. If you really want to wake up, if the Great Awakening is what inspires your protest, you must have the courage to look reality in the face, to understand that if these traitors have managed to come to power and today can decide the fate of individual nations and the whole world, it is because we have not reacted from the beginning against the first signs of their plans. We have tolerated the destruction of the family. We have endured the placing of true God on an equal footing with idols. We have allowed billions of innocent people to be killed by abortion. We have allowed our children to be corrupted with immorality, pornography, the corruption of gender theory, and the LGBT ideology. We have allowed our rulers to use freedom not to serve God and the common good, but to worship Satan and spread sin and vice. We have believed that if we left others free to act against the natural and divine law, they would in turn leave us free to be honest and good citizens. We fell into a huge deception, because our tolerance towards evil has today necessarily developed into society's intolerance for the good. The time has come to act. We must really all wake up, get on our feet, and demand that those who govern us be honest, think of the common good, and obey only God and those who elected them to help citizens live honestly, instead of seeing ourselves more humiliated each day, treated like slaves and forced to witness the destruction of everything that our fathers have laboriously built. The time has come to denounce the corrupt and the traitors, to expel those who do not serve the people but the deep state or the new world order, because none of us wants that new world order. Only the few who think they can still terrorize us with the pandemic, with the threat of the nuclear war, with the impoverishment of nations, with the imposition of absurd rules that no one has ever wanted or approved. The time has come not only to stand up, but also to get on our knees. Not the way Black Lives Matter does, but as every good Christian does before the majesty of God, or on our knees with the Holy Rosary in our hands, praying to the Lord to forgive our sins and the public sins of nations, imploring Him to have mercy on us, and promising Him that we first, all of us, commit ourselves to live as good Christians, as patriots, as honest citizens, as responsible fathers and mothers, as obedient children, as valiant soldiers. The time has come to establish an anti-globalist alliance, a worldwide civil movement that gives voice to the majority of citizens, denouncing the coup that is now in progress, revealing the connivances of the powerful, the conflicts of interest of the lobbies, and the lies of the mainstream media. This alliance must have its own clear and common purpose that refutes the agenda of globalism and opposes it with a concrete proposal in conformity with the natural law, the common good, and the good governance. A proposal that promotes harmony among nations and peaceful coexistence among sovereign peoples, whose right to live in their own homelands must be recognized, as well as the right to build their own future and well-being, without exploiting others and without being exploited. A proposal that gives centrality to sovereignty of nations, to the protection of religion, culture and traditions, to defense of life and the family. A proposal that definitely breaks the odious chains of the dictatorship of the ideologies that in recent decades have been imposed on us only to destroy us in soul and body. Dear friends, may you recognize the United States of America as one nation under God. Have the courage and the courage to oppose with all your strength the conspirator who have infiltrated the post of government, all the corrupt people who are willing to provoke a world conflict in order to obey their masters, and all the traitors who want to subject humanity to Satan's hateful tyranny. Awake, dear Americans. Awake and put on the armor of light, as St. Paul says. Do not be afraid to give courageous witness to your faith, your love for your homeland, your legitimate desire for honesty and goodness, for truth and beauty. If you know how to side with Christ, is certainly victory will also be yours. May God bless you all. May God bless and inspire your reawakening with holy purposes. And may God bless the United States of America.